Welcome everybody. Also on behalf of Erwin, we are really happy that you're here and to hear a bit about things that talk. I think it's good to start where we also started, and that was actually was a personal story. I was teaching Manchu studies at Leiden University. Manchu is the language of the last dynasty in China. And it was always very text-based because I'm also trained as a philologist. But I always wanted to bring material into the classroom and talk about it and look to the, for example, coins and shells together with students to use them as an alternative to text. And what really caught my attention, and also against the background that I myself am visually impaired. So I always thought that people with good vision are really good in looking at material culture. And when I taught, I realized that that was not the case for my students. And I felt guilty because I was teaching them about text, but I all of a sudden realized that we have to pay more attention to other objects as well, besides text. So there the journey began, and yes, we started to, I brought more and more material into the classroom, and Erwin right now is showing a helmet of the Qing dynasty. And if you open it in Things That Talk and you go, Erwin, left to the helmet is a marker, yes. And if you open the middle image in Things That Talk, then you will see that I brought this to class. Actually, I was quite fortunate because it's a real helmet from the Qing dynasty. And I asked students, I said, what do you see? And they saw that it resembled something like what we see in Chinese culture with dragons fighting for a pearl. So we see two dragons in the middle and there's something roundish there, and that should be the pearl. But yeah, they said, well, it's not that well made and it doesn't look really neat. And that was an extra incentive for me to think about how can we teach our students at Leiden University, how can we teach them to both look at the object, but also connect it to all the other knowledge that we get from text, and just basically by being humans. So in this very instance, it is not really visible, this dragon and this pearl. And it is because when the Manchus went to war, the enemies, they had to be overwhelmed by the grandeur of the army. So it wasn't really necessary to make the embroidery very, very neat, because when they were approaching, it was not that important anymore. So in this sense, we were trying to get more connections between objects and texts and history and us as human beings.
If I may interrupt, for the people who want to follow along at home, Julia can drop in the first link at this point.
Oh, first link, yeah, but we're moving away from this one, so
she can drop the second link straight away after it.
Yeah, straight away the second link, and please visit the helmet when you have time. So this was the incentive to also to talk to the university and say we are in the humanities, because that was the faculty that this was happening in. But we realized that we needed to build something that actually could fulfill this need to explore the connections between objects and the other things that we learn in language learning and text reading. Something different besides this that happened in that same moment of time was that I myself personally had to help my grandmother move all of her belongings. And you see her here sitting in her living room, 93 years old already. And we helped her move all her stuff. And a lot of her stuff came from Suriname, because she came in from Suriname to the Netherlands in the 70s. And I realized when helping her that the best way to talk with her about her life and her history and her connection to Dutch and Surinamese culture was through the life of objects. I just randomly, when we were organizing everything, I picked something up and shared it with her. And I think a really good example, Erwin, if you move to the back, way in the back of the living room, next to that small, so it's that jar actually in the back. The jar in the back for me is something which is a symbol because it was there for 30 years, as long as I can remember. And I always thought, what a hideous thing. And then later when we moved, I realized that inside of that jar is bauxite used for building materials like airplanes, and something that is in big portions available in Suriname. And my grandmother brought it all the way from Suriname by boat to Holland because she expected that the content of that jar would be her pension plan. And all the stories that I exchanged with her were so tangible because we discussed it through the life of objects. And that is actually when everything came together. And I remember vividly sitting together with my colleagues at Leiden University. And a lot of my colleagues also had this aha moment, like, we need to build something. And that is where Erwin and his great team came in, because we also realized that universities not always have the opportunity to go on board with great agencies because of limited funds. But at this point of time, we were all convinced that we needed to get the help from the outside and combine the humanities with the tech and the design world. And with this, I would like to hand it over to Erwin.
Hi, so my name is Erwin. I've been working at the agency called Q42 for the past year or so. And by that time, Things That Talk was already well underway. I think I joined the Q42 rocket just about a month after the first launch of Things That Talk. And so together with a design agency called Fabriek, a lot of energy had already been spent on building Things That Talk. And so you've seen already a couple of examples of what Things That Talk is, and Julia shared a link so you can play around a little bit on your own as well. What I think makes Things That Talk a unique platform, not just from a technical perspective, but also from what it is trying to accomplish towards users, is that so Things That Talk tries to help students firstly tell stories and tell them, as Fresco has outlined, to really sort of zoom in on what connects these stories to history, to the world around them. So that's why we're here at the Europeana conference, trying to make also the connection between this layer of very detailed and sometimes personal stories with all of the data that is out there, and all of the wonderful images around the wonderful objects that are stored in personal collections, in people's homes, but also in museums around the world and other heritage institutions. And so Things That Talk as a platform connects stories to objects and data around those objects. And for us as an agency, it was the first time that we were actually looking into the world of under the pressure of Fresco's request to do something with linked data, to really look at how do we bring in the properties of those things and combine them with the various dimensions that those things have, or in other words, dimension, the story layer. So the way that we are providing the data, the properties, is by pulling in information from Wikidata. Wikidata as a publicly editable source, as a very structured source of data, and as a source where students can also contribute to knowledge that they have while researching these things, these objects that they find either from their own interests or in specific collections. So Wikidata is one of the sources that we pull in to sort of provide contextual information about that data. And so we pull it in thanks to the strength of graph-related knowledge as it is modeled in Wikidata. The second layer, the story, is something that we provide with a platform. And Julia, this is where you can put in the third link, I think, at this point, the Micro showcase. So we do the storytelling layer based on a tool that we developed throughout various projects with public broadcasters, cultural heritage organizations and institutes, the Space Institute, you name it. There's a lot of nonprofits there as well, that use this sort of a storytelling platform to work with high resolution images on the web. So Micro serves out IIIF based images, and allows storytellers to then sort of put in story points and do tours around them. And Things That Talk combines those functionalities with the sort of the highly detailed properties of linked data and puts that together on a platform that's there to really sort of showcase some of the learning and some of the work that people do around the variety of things in there. And then it's back to you, Fresco.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's good to have a look at an example. So let's have a look at what you already saw in the screen, this Mycenaean stirrup jar. So what I would like to talk you through is the process that teachers go through with their students. But in this moment of time, also all kinds of other storytellers like museums and researchers themselves. So what happens is that somebody picks an object and they want to tell a story about the object. And we have several guidelines where we ask them to, first of all, think about the object, look at the material, and really first look at the objectives. So, Erwin, if you will, if you want to slide out the information, what is it, the detail page in the, yeah. So, for many people, if you're not familiar by looking at the objects, it's good to use linked data as a way to mind map, to think about what is it made of, what is its age, where was it found, where is it now, like the transition from one place to the other is already telling us heaps of information that is historical relevant. So in the right-hand side, you see the linked data connected to Wikidata. It's a way for students and storytellers to really objectively think about what are we looking at. Then to the left of that, you see a very museum-like description telling us something general about the object, again, based on the linked data. So it's their first way into the object. Then if you click this away, Erwin, then it's up to the students to start and tell the story. If you click on Start Tour, we typically ask storytellers to first sit down and think about what is the actual story that you want to tell. It has to be very clear from the first point of your story that you as an audience are dealing with an expert, but at the same time that we're not looking at an academic essay. It has to be expert, but made available for a wider audience, which is a new genre at least in Leiden University, to explore for students and teachers. When they think about the beginning and the end, then they have to write what is highlighted here so nicely in the Things That Talk green, is that people have to write a teaser. So write something interesting which makes me want to click and go into that story. So if you click on it, Erwin, so this is the process that I'm talking, also the students, every step they have to take. One interesting thing that really stood out in the beginning is that within the humanities, we like to zoom out first. So people started from this meta level. So in the first 50 stories, people always handed in something where they zoomed out as soon as you press the start button. But as we explained to the storytellers is that we want to get the people close to the object, inside of that object. So start with a zoom in and really something that gets the story going. After that, if we click to the next step, Erin, if I remember correctly, the camera you can position everywhere. And in this specific marker, you see something that we built in a I think phase 3 of Things That Talk, where teachers and students, they were struggling because they said, sometimes we want to dive deeper into a certain part of that object. And we said, okay, we will arrange something that you can have some deeper level of engagement with the topic, but it shouldn't stand away in the way of the narrative for the wider audience. So we created the "Do you want to dive deeper?" section of the stories. And the story, if you click through it, it goes, this story has quite a few steps. And we enable storytellers to use additional images. By now, also, we are able to turn an object around, not in this specific instance, so people can tell more about the various sides of the objects. We also give them the tooling to add audio, add movies, and even positional audio. So if you want to, for example, I remember a story about a crack in the ceramic of the porcelain of a Chinese art piece. And on the crack, you heard the sound of actual porcelain breaking, which is very different than something would be from another material. So this is basically what we're asking of the storytellers. Give us a good story that is expert, which also really connects an audience to the object. I'm not saying that we're there yet because we're learning, but we're getting there. Then after this, we created what we call zones. Erwin, I don't know if you, yeah. Oh, this is the, this is where, Erwin, you take over with this one, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yep. So you've seen a couple of very concrete examples, and these are loose things. And what we were then, so what we're seeing is that as these things are being taught in classes, there's often a thematic connection. And so we introduced zones as a way to sort of present groups of things as belonging to each other, because often, you know, a class on Boccaccio's Decameron would have a very different set of objects than that of the early Ming Dynasty, or you name it. So in this way, we try to sort of offer groupings of stories that are kind of connected. Also because we see, so Things That Talk was built as a prototype. It was used, it was initially funded with funds from Leiden University, where Fresco was working. And now it's sort of developed into a separate organization, the Things That Talk Foundation. And we are sort of, as we grow and develop the platform, we're also growing and developing its model of how people can contribute. Because what Fresco has experienced is that not just universities and colleges and institutes for higher learning are interested, but there's also a variety of cultural heritage organizations and museums that and libraries that see the advantage of this sort of this extra layer of information and storytelling. And so Things That Talk, the foundation has started a membership model to sort of provide the functionalities to other organizations. And also build out further methods of interacting. So what we have are these zones, and in the case of the Bilderdijkkamer, this was an example from the Leiden University Library, where this entire room, I don't have the example at hand, but Julia has a link for you all, which she will post in the comments, where you can sort of look around this 360-degree image of the room and really explore every object in it, and every object in itself with one or various stories. So you have this layered approach of being able to tell one or more stories around about objects that then are also sort of combined with other objects in a zone, if you still follow my logic. So right now, there's a number of members already sort of participating in Things That Talk, Leiden University and Leiden University Libraries, the Courtauld Institute in London, Macau University, and the Hong Kong Baptist University. And we're also, of course, very much open to interested organizations that want to contribute their own stories or find their own storytelling platform. And so this Build a Dike Room was one specific project for the library. Another one, this is a bit of a sneak preview, a sneak preview where we're also, Things That Talk is sort of used as a contextual extra layer of information for an actual museum exhibit. So the upcoming Miss Leiden exhibit at the Museum de Lakenhal is bringing together objects from various institutions around the city, and is presenting those at the museum, but all the visitors can then find more information and stories to follow on the Things That Talk platform. So that's part of that sort of the model where people become part of things that talk and also begin to influence the way that the platform is working and built. And then I think that brings us to the part where Julia can put our emails in the comment section. Fresco has a really good Instagram account for you to find that, for people that want to find another entry into the different stories. You can find me at this position. And then I'm very curious to hear if there's any people that want to know more at this point. I think we have about 5 minutes for questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erwin. I think we had the questions in the chat. Let me go. We had one question from Sharif. It's a question: are there underlying Wikidata queries available anywhere? I am thinking how others can reuse these data in another platform.
That's a solid question. I think I can take that one. At the moment, no. At the moment, it's kind of a single direction traffic. So we import Wikidata and we present it on the website. For us, the sort of next steps to take is make that data actually interactive and usable on the site itself. Because right now you can't use it as a filter or as an entry point or as a grouping mechanism. And that's very much something that would, of course, be wonderful. And then the second step would indeed to sort of be able to also serve that link data externally. So that's all for the future to come.
Yes. Another question from Louisa. How do you put that in action? Decolonizing museum collections put in action in Europe and North America?
Fresco, do you want to take this one?
So, sorry, what was the question?
Louisa, would you be comfortable to state your question?
I think I can answer to this one for a little bit. So right now I think the editorial part is something for Fresco to answer. But
how do you put this in action? Well, as you know, a huge project around the world is now putting in action decolonizing some of the collections, African collections, Mesoamerican collections that are in European museums. And all the political issues that surround that. How can you put, for example, your model project in action in this type of action? Because it's for me, it's quite applicable.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, this is a very good question, and it's actually something that things that talk behind, because you have to know right now in a year we have, I think, 250 stories online, but there are about double in the back end. And for example, we're engaging with projects in Suriname, so the former colonies of Holland, and to connect the collections that are available but not digitized yet in Suriname to the collections that we have in Holland. So a lot of the heritage is now in Holland, and connect that again to heritage that we have, that we see in, for example, in Western Africa. So those narratives from object perspectives, they very much connected. So this is exactly what we're trying to do now in small projects that you will see online maybe in a few months, is where we show within the context of the zone, so where we put various stories together, that you can actually see those connections. So it's something that we're very working for very hard. And also within our partners, we're always looking for exactly those narratives to also enrich our collection.
Okay, so somebody asked about maps, and I think I can answer that briefly. The answer is yes. We will be incorporating maps, and in fact, we've already done so. So I think if
you can find one in for example, the Mycenaean zone. So that's the zone where the.
So we go to all the things.
Yep. And while you're looking for that, I think another important, very important way that we try to also think about decolonizing collections is also the need that we need to realize that not everybody is English reading. So we are going step by step, and they are small steps, but we really work hard to say, okay, if we're going to tell something about stories about Suriname, then surely we also have to translate those stories into Surinamese as well. I think that's a very big step to bring it to an audience, actually giving the collections back to the communities where they once belonged. While we were, oh, you were already in the map, right?
I just showed the map. So we're having two conversations at the same time, but that's wonderful.
No, the maps are important. Also, in this stage, we have every object, everything can have one endpoint. In the future, we're very much discussing like, how can we show the movement of objects again, which is in itself a story where we can show these objects typically went to this country. I think maps are very powerful in this. So step by step, but we have a map implementation already.
Thank you, Fresco. Let's have one last question before finishing. We are a bit limited in time.
Yeah.
We have a question from Penelope. She's asking, I would like to ask you on how you deal with copyrights in your platform with the objects you have.
Yeah, so that is, we always have to be very careful with this. I think it's also very important that our students, that they learn how to deal with this. So right now, a lot of the things that we use are in the Creative Commons, so we are allowed to use them. That is actually 95% of the objects. Also, when it's not in Creative Commons, we reach out to the collections ourselves and say, we are telling a story, and we make sure that there's a deep link to that exact object in your collection. And until now, we never encountered any problems. On the contrary, I think the museums especially are very happy to collaborate on this. We have quite a lot of museums that are very proactive in saying, oh, we'll make new photographs for you. So copyright until now is something that, yeah, no problems there.
Thank you, Fresco. I think for today, thank you for this very interesting presentation. And yeah, thank you for joining today. I hope with this good presentation, and see you soon, and hopefully see you also in Gather Town and all the other sessions. Thank you.